If you're someone who clicked on this video, you're probably sleeping on companions. Companions are by far one of the strongest tools you have in Warframe, alongside your Warframe and your weapon builds, to boost your damage, improve your overall gameplay, and make your Warframe journey much easier.
Yes.
Now, what do we all love in Warframe? Fashion frame and damage. And believe me, you aren't optimizing your damage anything to its fullest potential if you aren't using the companions that I'm going to show you today. Even with something as simple as farming resources, companions can be a massive time saver. The truth is, I used to sleep on companions, and I don't want you to make the same mistake I did. Alright, hopefully I got you guys hooked in. Not to waste any of your time, let's go over some of the best mods that you will use in pretty much any companion build. If you skip on this part, nothing else will make sense. Manifold Bond. When an enemy with 3 or more status effects is killed, the ability cooldown will be reduced by 3 seconds. This mod is insane to say the least, because any ability that a companion has, whether it's Cordon from Nautilus or a universal ability mod like Guardian, they can all benefit from this cooldown reduction, but more into this later. Reinforced Bond is another amazing mod you should be using on any companion that can reach 1200 shields, because it gives you a 60% fire rate buff. A fire rate buff on any weapon is really good because it increases your overall damage per second, and the kill time on enemies becomes much quicker with weapons. A vacuum is a must on every single companion. There is never a good reason not to have this mod on. It helps you gather more materials, it makes your Warframe journey much easier. You just have to be using this mod at all times. Contagious Bond is a companion mod that causes enemies killed by companions to spread a fraction of their status effects to nearby enemies. This is the main mod that you will use to nuke rooms, but I'll get into that a bit more later. Vicious Bond, an amazing mod. It helps armor strip rooms of enemies, especially when paired with corrosive and warframes that do a lot of ability damage. Tenacious Bond is a companion mod that reduces companion recovery on headshot kills. In addition, a critical damage multiplier is granted to the owner's weapon if the companion's critical chance is above 50%. Now, 0.2 times seems kinda weak, right? Well, not really. This critical damage boost is added to your overall crit damage. So the final crit damage multiplier you'll have on your weapon, that's what this will multiply with. So if you have a 10x critical damage multiplier, this will give you an additional 2 times critical damage multiplier, which is pretty strong.
Yes.
The other mod you should have on every companion that has 4 legs, so any companion that's not a sentinel, you need to have Resourceful Retriever on, because it has a 17% chance to double the resource gains that you get. Now, this does include Steel Essence as well as Vitus Essence. It's a very good mod. If you don't have it, buy it straight away because it will definitely bring you more plat than it will cost you over time. Highly recommend this mod. Alright, I just wanted to go over those mods because they are the most used mods and pretty much every companion will be using them. But now let's get into the actual companion builds. Okay, for our first and notably the strongest companion in the game, Nautilus Prime. His unique mod is called Cordon. It pulls enemies to you and has a 30-second cooldown. Now, a 30-second cooldown is way too long. Well, that's where Manifold Bond comes in and helps us reduce the cooldown. If you utilize this mod properly, Nautilus will pull enemies around every 5 seconds. The weapon we will use with Nautilus Prime is a Verglass Prime, because this weapon is a beam weapon with a high status chance and the ability to nuke entire rooms. Fired Up is a mod that we will apply to Nautilus Prime, which will give us multiple heat procs when an enemy is hit. Now, Fired Up is a companion mod, so you have free reign to build whatever you want on the actual weapon. For the weapon, I would recommend you guys build Viral, and I would recommend Magnetic. Now, you're probably asking why Magnetic. Well, Magnetic strips Overguard. Currently, a lot of the endgame content has a lot of Eximus units, and you don't want the damage to spread to Overguard units and their Overguard just tanks it because it can hurt. But if we spread Magnetic as well as Heat and Viral, then we will effectively nuke anything and everything that comes in our way. For utility mods, you should use Guardian and Shield Charger, because shield gating right now is one of the best things in the game, and I hate shield gating on Warframes, so I just do it with my companion and it works beautifully. We're going to use Reinforced Bond because with a maxed out calculated redirection we can get to 1200 shields very easily, so we'll give ourselves the 60% fire rate buff. You can also use Tenacious Bond if you get a ruin for the Verglass Prime with crit chance, but I honestly wouldn't recommend it because it's way too expensive, and if you're not someone who's sitting on thousands of plat, there's really literally no need for you to get a ribbon for this weapon. Now, even though Nautilus Prime is the strongest companion in the game, it's not the one that I use at all. The one I prefer using with pretty much every Warframe in the game is the Panzer Vulpaphyla. Now, this companion is one of the most loved companions in the game. If you haven't got one for yourself, you have to go out and get one. The Panzer Vulpaphyla has an ability called Viral Quills. Viral Quills act like sarin spores, as in spores get created on enemies, and when these spores are shot, they will explode and spread the effect to all enemies that are within a 15-meter radius. So you have massive viral proccing with this pet. Since Panzer Vulpaphylas have claws, all you need is Bite, which is a mod that increases your critical chance and your critical damage, which can easily bring the Panzer Vulpaphyla's critical chance above 50%, which makes Tenacious Bond a no-brainer, giving us a 20% final critical damage multiplier to every single weapon in our arsenal. Since it is also easy to hit 1200 shields on the Panzer Vulpaphyla with a fully upgraded calculated redirection, we can get the additional 60% fire rate buff. So from our Panzer Vulpaphyla alone, we're getting viral application, a fire rate buff, as well as a critical damage buff, which on any Warframe is amazing. On top of that, we have Vicious Bond, which helps us armor strip enemies, and with the use of ability damage, we can spread this armor strip around the entire map. In addition to the armor strip that we do get from Vicious Bond, Duplex Bond also works amazingly because all the clones that you make will have the effect of Vicious Bond, where if they attack an enemy, they will reduce the amount of armor they have by 15%. Now, this is an overall armor strip. This is not an armor strip depending on how much armor they have, meaning if the enemy has a total of 1000 armor, the first attack will strip 15% of the armor, which is 150. The next attack won't be 15% of 850, it will still be 15% of 1000, meaning the next attack will armor strip 300 armor. Now, if you have 4 pets running around, hitting enemies constantly, and you're effectively spreading this armor strip through the use of damage abilities, you're armor stripping entire rooms. It's very good. Another important thing that I probably should mention is that whenever this companion gets downed, it turns into a small sentinel that does viral damage to all enemies around you, and it only takes 30 minutes to regen, which is amazing because with Tenacious Bond, this companion is active 99% of the time. It's never dead. This makes the Panzer Vulpaphyla arguably one of the best support companions in the game. A lot of people still say that the Nautilus Prime is the best companion. I personally don't think so. I think this companion is by far one of the strongest companions in the entire game. If you're looking for a strong companion, those two companions are the best companions in the game right now. There's nothing really that comes close. Some people argue that Hounds can come close. If you're someone who's new to the game and you're someone who likes testing builds out, I would highly recommend you get the Helios Prime. The Helios Prime is an S tier for completing your codex on enemies. It scans enemies when you're running around, and it also detects vulnerabilities. The ability to armor strip is actually really good. Now, a lot of people don't know about this, but it's been something that's been in the game for a very long time. If you pair Vicious Bond with Assault Mode and the weapon that the Helios Prime has, which is a glaive, you can effectively armor strip entire groups of enemies, because the way glaives work is when a glaive hits an enemy, it'll hit another enemy, and it'll hit another enemy. And every time the glaive hits an enemy, that 15% armor reduction will be applied. And if you're using any damage ability that can spread the Vicious Bond effects of armor strip, then you're effectively armor stripping entire rooms. Let me get the two OG kavats out the way, the Smita and the Adarza. The Adarza kavat was used with a mod called Cat's Eye, which would give you a 60% increase in your critical chance for 10 seconds every 20 seconds. Now, I personally think that this kavat is very out of date. I don't think it's good to use at all. Its health and shield pools are really low, meaning it's very easy to kill for enemies. The claws have a high crit chance and a crit damage multiplier, so you can have Tenacious Bond easily, but just go with the Panzer Vulpaphyla. It's just a much better option. The Smita kavat, what used to be my most used kavat in the game, because of an augment that the Smita kavat had called Charm. Now, Charm used to give a 100% resource drop boost to every resource that was in the game, including Steel Essence and Vitus Essence, which is why I used it a lot. But recently they gutted this ability and replaced the effect that you would get from Charm, Resourceful Retriever. Now, personally, I think Resourceful Retriever is an amazing addition to the game because you have a consistent 18% chance to get loot all of the time, which I would argue is much more consistent than just Charm, because Charm had 5 to 6 buffs that it could give you. The chance of you getting it were very low, and you had to wait 27 seconds to even get any sort of buff. So having Resourceful Retriever on all the time, I would argue, is much better. But because of this change, this meter kavat is no longer useful, in my opinion. You can still use this meter kavat if you want. I would encourage against it. Shade Prime with its Augment Ghost allows you to stay invisible while spamming abilities. The thing that breaks Shade's invis is weapons, however not abilities. And there are some Warframes that you can use with certain helmet abilities that you don't even have to use weapons with ever. My favorite being Zaku and Tempest Barrage. You can stay perma invis while just spamming abilities as much as you want. I can make a video on how to do this later, but to give you an idea, I'll use Zaku in this example. You put Tempest Barrage on Zaku, you become invisible, and whenever you're invisible, enemies can't see you. But you can steal their weapons, and you can cast Tempest Barrage as much as you want. So while Tempest Barrage is active, applying Mass Viral and Mass Corrosive, your weapons will be doing all the damage you need them to do. And the build is fun to say the least. Shade Prime has another augment called Ambush, which gives you 120% weapon damage buff. I think is a 240%, I might be wrong. But it only lasts for 3 seconds, and you only get given it when the invis breaks, which honestly is not that great. The WYRM Prime is a great companion to have as well. Its main selling point is that it can give you status immunity, which in this game is very, very, very strong. Because, as you know, everybody's worst enemy in a high level mission is Toxin. Because Toxin just straight up kills you. And what's the best way to avoid Toxin? You just avoid every status effect. Negate is a mod that the worm has, which cleanses as well as prevents any status effects being put on you once every 5 seconds. Which means if you get any status effect inflicted on you, if it's been 5 seconds and you haven't had another status effect being inflicted on you, it will clear that status effect or multiple status effects for you, which makes it very good. On top of that, it can give you the fire rate and the critical damage buff from Reinforced Bond and Tenacious Bond, which is always nice to have. It can give you passive shield gate like every other Sentinel can, and it can also slow down enemies around you, which again, every Sentinel can do as well. So the only real thing it has is cleansing status effects with the additional fire rate buff and the crit damage buff. So if you hate status effects and you don't want to bother with them, you can use this companion. I do want to add, I just learnt that it doesn't only affect Toxin, it also prevents you from getting knocked down, which in this game is pretty damn OP. And if you're a player who hasn't been playing for a long time, and you have some spare platinum and you hate being knocked down in missions, honestly, I would recommend this companion. Because status immunity in this game is very, very, very valuable. If you're someone who, for some reason, is still struggling with energy economy, which I don't know how you would be, the Dethcube is another companion that you can use, which helps you get a lot of energy orbs and a lot of health orbs. And if you pair this with Equilibrium on your Warframe, you never run out of energy. This Warframe's only gimmick is that after the Dethcube assists in 10 kills, it will drop you an energy orb. That's it. Which sounds difficult because your companion only attacks one enemy at a time, but with the help of Duplex Bond, you can have 4 Dethcubes running around shooting enemies, which then makes the energy drops much more consistent and much easier to have. Talking about nuke sentinels, let's have an honorable mention. Diriga is another pet that a lot of other Warframe players use. Because of its augment, Arc Coil. Arc Coil can proc Arc on Stretch, it's a very good primer, and also has very good nuke potential. The CC effect from Arc Coil also helps if you're not nuking loads of enemies. If you're just running a weapons platform build, having the couple second CC stun from the electricity proc is also nice to have. But one good thing about Arc Coil is that it can trigger the Sentinel ability fired up, which means every time you hit an enemy with Arc Coil, they will also have a heat proc applied to them. Heat procs on enemies is nothing to sleep on, as 4 heat procs can temporarily armor strip enemies up to 50%, which just makes it overall an amazing status to have on enemies at all times. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I've been sleeping on Hounds for the longest time, and oh boy, let me tell you, was it a massive mistake. I would say Hounds have better nuke potential than the Nautilus, which is kind of crazy to say because the Nautilus Prime can just beam one enemy to death and spread its status effects very easily. However, the one part that the Nautilus lacks on a lot is priming enemies, and that's why a lot of people use Diriga over the Nautilus Prime, because Diriga's arc coil, with the help of Manifold Bond, can prime enemies very, very well. Well, what if I told you that the Hounds were Diriga but infinitely better? So after some damage testing and some build testing, I found out that Hounds can actually nuke a whole group of Eximus enemies with no problem whatsoever. They're also very durable and they rarely ever die, which is another massive plus. I still wouldn't use the Hounds over the Panzer Vulpaphyla just because of how much things the Panzer Vulpaphyla can do. However, the Hounds, honestly, are a very strong contender. Now, for you newer players, the Hounds probably aren't a good companion to go for since they're locked behind a lot of quests. The main quest that you have to complete is Deadlock Protocol, which is a quest that you do much later on when you get much further into the game in terms of story. But if you do have this quest unlocked and you haven't done the Sisters of Parlos yet, first of all, what are you doing? The Tenet weapons are extremely powerful. My favorite being the Plinks, which I know, unpopular opinion, but there's a lot of good weapons, and every time you kill a sister, the sister actually gives you a free hound. It doesn't really matter which hound you go for because they all kind of have the same stats, they just come with different mods. But that also isn't an issue because you can just buy the mods off the Warframe marketplace. If you don't want to buy them, then you could keep farming the sisters to get extra mods, and some of these mods actually do sell for sometimes 15 to 20 plat, so if you want to have that as an extra source of income, you can do that as well. There are 9 unique mods in total that you can use with the Hounds. However, you can only use 3 of these unique mods. Out of these 9 mods, there are 3 different categories, and every category has 3 mods within it. You can't have 2 mods from the same category on the Hound, you have to have 1 from each, which sounds bad, but honestly, even with this restriction, the Hounds are still very much broken. Now, the 3 mods I like to use on my Hound is Null Audit, Reflex Denial, and Synergize Prospectus. Null Audit basically just steals the ability that an Eximus unit would have. Now, the ability that the Hound steals can actually work with Manifold Bond. Reflex Denial allows your companion to get 90% damage reduction for 10 seconds, and it also gives you a shield that reflects magnetic damage. Now, every time magnetic damage is reflected, again, Manifold Bond helps you prime all the enemies with all the different statuses that are on your melee weapon. Synergize Prospectus works like Diriga's arc coil, throws out 7 sparks that do electricity damage that ricochet off enemies within a 30-meter radius, which is a massive radius. Again, Synergize Prospectus procs Manifold Bond, and it applies all of the status effects that your companion weapon would have. Now, with these 3 mods together, the amount of statuses that you're applying to enemies is absurd. As long as your companion's abilities are up, which they always will be with the help of Manifold Bond, you can prime the entire map. If you guys want to try my build, you can. Vicious Bond gives me armor strip. Manifold Bond helps reduce the cooldown of the abilities, as well as give all of our Hound abilities the ability to proc all the elements on a weapon. Momentous Bond gives us an additional status effect that the companion applies. Contagious Bond allows us to nuke enemies. Calculated Redirection I'm just using to make sure that my companion doesn't die in 2 seconds. You can use armor or health, whichever one you find more favorable. And Vacuum to just pull resources. The other pets are good for very niche things, but for overall gameplay, they don't come close to the Nautilus or the Panzer Vulpaphyla. If you guys did enjoy this video and you did find it helpful, please drop a like and please sub to the channel. I am a new Warframe content creator. I recently hit 1.5k subs, which I'm very happy about, so thank you guys for all the love and support, and I hope you guys have a great week, and until next time.